Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo, and I just cannot believe that we are already halfway through January. We're halfway through the first month of 2020, and it's just crazy to me, but I feel like this year is going to be a good one. I just feel like it's just going to be a good year. There's already so many amazing stories out and happening, and I think it's just going to continue. So I'm going to start today's episode with a scientific breakthrough. This is a big one, so I thought I would start off strong this episode. So researchers have succeeded in developing a machine that repairs injured human livers and keeps them alive outside the body for 7 days. This is a huge breakthrough in transplant medicine. It's definitely going to be able to increase the number of available organs for transplantation and save so many more lives of people that are suffering with severe liver disease or a variety of different cancers. This is just, it's huge, because before you were only able to have a liver stored outside the body for only a few hours, but with this new technology, it is an entire week. So even injured livers can now be kept alive outside the body for an entire week. So they are just completely broadening the availability of organs that are going to be able to use for people that are suffering with severe liver disease or other cancers as well. So this was a 4-year project. It was developed by a group of surgeons, biologists, and engineers. So it started back in 2015. And at first, when it just started, livers were only able to keep on the machine for 12 hours. But now, with it being able to keep a liver for 7 days, it can also repair, like I said, injured livers as well, cleaning of fat deposits in the liver, or even regeneration of partial livers. So this technology is absolutely crazy. It was developed under the umbrella of Wyss Zurich Institute. And so this means that it brought together highly specialized technical, biomedical experts, but from various institutions. So I guess in the original phase of this whole entire project, one of the most difficult things they had to do was find a common language that they could all communicate, because they had people from all over the place, all different language barriers, trying to work on this project. So they had to figure out a language that they would be able to communicate in. But after 4 years, they have created this technology. It's going to open such a large avenue for so many applications, and to offer a new life for many patients with end-stage liver disease or cancer. So such a huge breakthrough. It's so exciting. So even the livers that are usually not suitable for transplantation, like the injured ones or anything like that, they can actually still regain function while perfused in the machine for several days. So the basis for this technology is a complex perfusion system, which is basically mimicking most core body functions close to physiology. It was developed by researchers from the University Hospital Zurich, but it was developed by a group of people from kind of all different places, which is kind of cool. That is a huge breakthrough in the medical world. I'm I'm so excited to see like the increase of available organs now and the lives that are going to be saved, because this is just absolutely huge. So I thought I would start off with that because, like I said, we're only halfway through January in 2020 and just amazing things are happening. Speaking of an amazing thing happening, there is a 17-year-old boy who has discovered a new planet. Yes, his name is Wolf Kukier. He's a senior in high school in New York. And this past summer, he got an internship with NASA. And on the third day of his internship, he discovered a new planet. Isn't that absolutely crazy? This planet is roughly 6.9 times larger than Earth. So he landed this 2-month internship, like I said, back in the summer. And literally on his third day, he is discovering a new planet. Only at 17 years old. So this internship required him to examine like variations of star brightness through NASA's transiting exoplanet survey satellite. And so upon like kind of noticing a slight dip in the brightness readings, he thought that the variation was simply due to a stellar eclipse. So then he continued to examine the data a little bit further, and he discovered that the dip was actually coming from a planet. So this is what he said. I was looking through the data for everything the volunteers had flagged as an eclipsing binary, which is a system where 2 stars circle around each other, and from our view, they eclipse each other every single orbit, I guess. So he says, about 3 days into my internship, I saw a signal from a system called TOI 1338. At first, I thought it was a stellar eclipse, but the timing was wrong. It turned out to be a planet. So NASA has confirmed his findings. They announced it on their website, and Wolf actually got to write a paper alongside some scientists from San Diego State University, University of Chicago, and some other different institutions, and that paper is going to be submitted to a scientific journal. So that's pretty cool. So I guess the system that this planet is in, it's TOI 1338 system, and it lies about 1,300 light years away in the constellation Pictor. So this planet is now called TOI 1338b, and the 2 stars orbit each other every 15 days. One is about 10% more massive than our sun, while the other is cooler, dimmer, and only 1/3 the sun's mass. So TOI 1338b is the only known planet in this system. It's around 6.9 times larger than Earth. So crazy. Or between the sizes of Neptune and Saturn. So the planet orbits in almost exactly the same plane as the stars as it experiences regular stellar eclipses. So at 17 years old, he is finding a new planet. Third day into his NASA internship, I thought that was pretty cool. Like I said before, we are literally halfway through January and just crazy, amazing things are being discovered and happening, and it's so exciting. I've never been much of a space person, but listening to this story and kind of like learning a little bit more about it, I was doing research about it. It's so interesting. I wish I was more of a space person, but I just cannot believe a 17-year-old boy has discovered a new planet. 6.9 times larger than Earth. What a cool discovery. So we've already had a huge scientific breakthrough. We've already found a new planet. We're starting off to such a good start. It's only going to go up from here. Now, my next story is about a man from Nebraska, and he is being hailed as a hero. He saved 3 men whose car landed completely upside down in an icy pond, and they could not get out. His name is Terry Ingram, and he quickly jumped to action and saved these 3 men's lives. It was absolutely crazy. So he was standing outside, and he was taking pictures, and I guess this car it was a white sedan, and he saw it lose complete control while crossing the railroad tracks, and then they striked like a fire hydrant, and I guess the car didn't even hit the ground. It just went straight airborne into the pond, upside down in this ice cold pond. And he was just standing outside taking pictures. So he heard them screaming for help. And He could hear them, screaming, the car is sinking, and he quickly jumped to action, and he actually went into the pond, and as soon as he opened the car door, the car started to fill with water. But Terry was able to rescue all 3 men out of the water. He managed to pull one of the doors open, like I said, get them out, drag them to shore. Only 2 of the men were actually taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, which is amazing. But Terry just said that he is feeling so lucky and thankful that he was at the right place at the right time to save these 3 men, because they just do not think that they would have been able to make it out of that water. So talk about being in the right place at the right time, I guess. He just witnessed this car basically right in front of him as he was just taking pictures. And he said now that as he looks back on some of the pictures and stuff that he was taking that day, he still just feels so lucky to have been there and to help these 3 men. And he actually wants to reach out to them and see how they are doing in their recovery. So, being hailed as a hero, right place at the right time. It is time for a little bit of a break, but don't go anywhere, because I have more amazing stories to share with you today that are going to be putting a smile on your face. Stay tuned.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So this next story is absolutely amazing. A airline has really taken a huge step into reducing its contribution to global warming. So starting in July of 2020, all domestic JetBlue flights will begin offsetting carbon dioxide emissions. So this makes them the first major U.S. airline to take a step towards reducing its contribution to global warming. They also announced that the plans to start flying with sustainable aviation fuel about mid-2020 on flights from San Francisco International Airport. So interesting. So this airline is taking a huge step forward into, really trying to do what they can to limit their contribution to this global warming and to the climate crisis. So CEO Robin Hayes says, air travel connects people and cultures and supports a global economy. Yet we must act to limit this critical industry's contributions to climate change. We reduce where we can and offset where we can't. By offsetting all of our domestic flying, we're preparing our business for the lower carbon economy that aviation in all sectors must plan for. So they are going to be doing this by offsetting carbon dioxide emissions with programs to balance customer flying during specific times of the year. But this is the most recent initiative expands that the company's efforts to reduce the emissions that are associated with fuel use in a bigger way. So they actually partner with a leading U.S.-based nonprofit carbon reduction and climate solutions organization. So since 2008, JetBlue has already offset more than 2.6 billion pounds of CO2 emissions in partnership with the organization. JetBlue's new carbon offsetting partners now also include established experts in the space, EcoAct and South Pole. So they're going really above and beyond and doing what they can. So this expansion is expected to offset an additional 15 to 17 billion pounds of emissions per year. Isn't that absolutely crazy? That is the annual equivalent of removing more than 1.5 million passenger vehicles from the road. Talk about such a huge, big step forward. So they say that carbon offsetting is a bridge to other industry-wide environmental improvements like fuel with lower emissions. So JetBlue has agreed to purchase sustainable aviation fuel from Neste, and this fuel is actually produced 100% from waste and residue raw materials. So 100% from waste and residue raw materials. It has up to 80% smaller carbon footprint compared to fossil jet fuel over its entire life cycle. 80%. That's crazy. This fuel is fully compatible with the existing jet engine technology and fuel distribution infrastructure. So when it's blended with other fossil jet fuel. So they don't have to make any crazy jet changes. It is it's compatible. And they actually ship this fuel through the fuel pipeline to the airport. This is the world's largest producer of renewable diesel and pioneer in renewable jet fuel. Neste is. So they have this amazing 100% from waste and residue raw materials. They are making such a huge step forward, but they are not just doing that. They're not just changing a bunch of their aviation fuel. The airline is actually incoming a new engine option called 85 new Airbus A321neo. So this aircraft will help reduce carbon emissions more than ever before. It's improving the fuel economy by 20% through newly designed engine technology and cabin changes. Also, in addition, the acquisition of 70 Airbus A220 to replace the older aircraft marks a major investment over several years, reducing the emissions per seat by about 40% compared to the older aircraft that they will replace. So JetBlue is coming with this new aviation fuel. They are going to be offsetting so much carbon emissions, the CO2, and they are also having this new engine option that is going to make another huge step forward. I just really think that this is kind of like a ripple effect, this, I guess there is other airlines that have been taking step forwards to try to reduce their contribution to global warming. But this is the first major U.S. airline to take this step. And I think it's going to have the ripple effect. I think now, more and more airlines and companies like this that are really going to see what this is doing and see that they need to try to take a step forward, and hopefully they see what JetBlue is doing and they also take a step forward in reducing their contribution, because it's true, we airplanes and all that, we need them, but it is contribute to global warming hugely. So it's super cool to see an airline doing what they can to help the climate crisis. My next story now is about a 95-year-old woman who was robbed of her life savings. But thanks to her community, she managed to replace all of it by serving spaghetti. Yes, you heard that right, by serving spaghetti. So let me give you a little bit of a background story. Her name is Barbara Hinckley, and her bank accounts were completely emptied of about $16,000 after she was targeted by a con man who basically convinced her she had won second place in a publisher's clearinghouse contest with a prize of $2.5 million and a Mercedes-Benz. So Barbara thought that she won this. She ended up getting completely conned after, scammed out of all of her money. So she's from Auburn, and she told some news reporters about this scam just in hope, that she would be able to stop anyone else from falling for this. She didn't want anyone else to kind of make the same mistake she did. So she reached out to the news, she told them about the story, and she got her story out there. Well, the former Maine governor, John Baldacci, heard about her story, and it made him very upset. So he said stealing from elderly is not the main way, he told the news. So that's why he actually put together a spaghetti dinner fundraiser for her. Now, listen to this. There was 60 pounds of noodles, 17 gallons of sauce, and dozens of cases of veggies. And their goal was to not have any food left and to help raise her money back. 60 pounds of noodles, 17 gallons of sauce, and dozens of cases of veggies. So 400 people attended this event, and they raised a whopping $18,000, which is just more than she even got scammed out for. She just wanted to kind of reach out to the news and just say how amazed she is, her and her family are, by everyone's compassion in her community to come together and help her, like, get this money back. It's just so cool. She's so warmed by all the love and compassion that the community has shown just to help her out by doing this. She's also very happy that she could, share her story so it could just serve as a warning for others. She doesn't want this to happen to absolutely anybody else. So she just wanted to reach out again and share her story. But I just think that is so cool. A community community coming together and serving spaghetti and raising $18,000. Like, that is just absolutely crazy. 60 pounds of noodles. That is a lot of food. But they had none of it left, and they were above and beyond their goal to help Barbara out. It's so cool to see a community come together, work together, and help people that are in need and that need that extra help when something happens. It wasn't her fault. She got scammed out, and, like, at 95 years old, like, she needs this money to keep moving on and keep living. So cool to see her community come together and eat a ton of spaghetti and raise so much money. But on that note, it is time for another break. Don't go anywhere. When we get back, I do have a story about a nonprofit organization, and it's kind of based on faith, and they help children out big time. It's called Safe Families for Children, and they're doing amazing things. You don't want to miss this story, so stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast. You're listening to the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Like I said before the break, I have a story about a faith-based nonprofit organization that is going above and beyond and helping so many families out. So it's called Safe Families for Children, and they are a faith-based nonprofit organization, and they basically temporarily care for children whose parents are experiencing homelessness, medical emergencies, domestic violence, drug addiction, or basically any other challenges that they feel like they need some extra help with taking care of their kids. So Phil Cross is the director of the Central Ohio branch of Safe Families, and he says, "It says in the Bible that God places the lonely in families. These families are socially isolated. They're experiencing a level of loneliness that has really caused disruption in their family that I think is unnecessary. To be able to engage with healthy community has really combated that loneliness." It's a pretty cool organization. They're based in Chicago, founded back in 2003. And this organization is a network of churches that come together and they assist parents experiencing that crisis that prevent them from caring for their child. So the host families volunteer to take the kids. Usually the kids are typically under 5 and under. And they take these kids into their homes for short periods of time. but they are making a huge step in helping so many. Last year, Central Ohio participants opened their homes for a total of about 2,000 combined nights. So that is a lot of nights to take these kids in and to help them out and to help these families. But it just makes such a big difference. The organization currently has more than 100 chapters across the United States and partnerships with volunteers in Canada and the United Kingdom. So because state welfare agencies do not get involved if children are not experiencing basically like blatant abuse or neglect, this is where Safe Families comes in, and they serve as like a supplement role for children who might not qualify for foster care, but whose parents think that they could just use some extra help for whatever crisis that they're going through at the time. So a part of, their mission is to keep the children united with their biological parents and original caregivers. They go above and beyond to make sure that those connections still stay, and they're just kind of helping out and making it a little bit easier for the parents that are going through things. So currently, Safe Families for Children Central Ohio has a network of 12 participating churches, and there's about 2 more preparing to join. So that is 14 churches that are participating and helping this out. And that means it's about 50 host families that are willing to take children in and kind of take them under their wing and help out for as long as they need. So it connects with families, through referrals, like from hospitals, homeless and domestic violence shelters, and other organizations. So basically any kind of shelter, hospital, anyone that's, helping someone in a crisis out can reach out to Safe Families and see if there is a host family to take their children and to just do a little bit extra, right? So here's one story about one woman named Allie Watson. She's a member of one of the churches in Upper Arlington, and she serves as both a family coach and a host family for Safe Families, because they do, so as part of Safe Family system, I'll give you a little bit more of a background story. So host families are supported by family coaches, so kind of similar to caseworkers. So there's like host families, and then there's people that are also volunteering to be kind of like family coaches, kind of help out that way. So the volunteers will provide the meals, transportation, babysitting services, and kind of any other resources that this family needs. And Safe Family completely relies on financial support from its participating churches. Or individual donations and grants. So they are accepting donations and everything, but it really comes from their churches that are participating. So, back to Allie Watson. So she's a member of a church up in Arlington. So she serves as both a family coach and a host family for the Safe Families organization. And last year, she took in a 9-month-old girl whose single father was kind of unable to care for her for about 4 months. So her and her husband, Josh, wanted to teach 3 young children about compassion. So they were able to take some children in. They were helping, particularly this one father as well, and took her in for quite some time. The father is now stable with a new job, and he does have the child back, but he actually has to wait for 50 days to receive some assistance with daily care costs from the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. So Allie is still helping with the babysitting, like just going above and beyond from what she, has to do. And she says, the main reason we're doing this is because we think that this is what Jesus did. We've seen a real gap in the church's presence in this way, especially among those in poverty. And so it's just super encouraging to see the church re-entering into these relationships. This is what we're supposed to be doing. So yeah, Safe Families has gone, like I said, above and beyond in helping out these children. And they do take donations from separate people, but it's mostly just these churches participating and helping them with their finances. But I thought that was a pretty cool organization. My next story is about a world record that has now been beaten by a man named Adam Gorlitsky. He is a man from South Carolina, and he just competed in the 2020 Charleston Marathon, and he has beaten the world record for the fastest time to finish a marathon in an exoskeleton suit. Yes. So he is paralyzed from the waist down, and he finished this marathon in an exoskeleton suit with a time of 33 hours, 50 minutes, and 23 seconds. It was his second marathon attempt ever. His first was at the Los Angeles Marathon in March of 2019, when he made it to 17.2 miles before stopping. So the Guinness has not certified his race results yet, but he is submitting those in. So right now, the current record holder is a man from Britain. His name is Simon, and he finished the 2018 London Marathon in 36 hours, 46 minutes, according to the Guinness World Records. So I guess Adam has been trying to break Simon's record for a year, and he said, now that I have, the second I cross that finish line, I have a whole new level of respect for him and anyone who walks a marathon wearing an exoskeleton suit. It was not easy at all. So I cannot even imagine 33 straight hours, 50 minutes, and 23 seconds. And he, at the end of it, he was absolutely sleep deprived, shivering, exhausted. But what really was able to push him to the end was the great support group that he had. The marathon was in his hometown, and many people came out to support him. So back in December of 2005, he was in a car accident that left him paralyzed from severe spinal cord injuries. His doctor thought that he would never be able to walk again, but 10 years later, Adam was able to stand up and walk using a ReWalk robotic exoskeleton. He is definitely a go-getter. He does not let anything get him down. But he didn't just break a world record. He also founded the nonprofit called I Got Legs back in 2016 after becoming the first paralyzed man to walk the Cooper River Bridge Run in Charleston using the robotic exoskeleton. It took him nearly 7 hours to complete the 6.2-mile race. But this organization is dedicated to improving the lives of the disabled community. So he's the founder of I Got Legs. But he is kind of on this cool journey. He's currently on 1 million steps tour. So this is where he plans to walk 1 million steps in road races across the United States using his robotic exoskeleton. So along with competing within this marathon, he also walked in nearly 50 road races all around the country. But his next goal, as he joked, would be go face-to-face whose record he beat. So against Simon, he kind of joked about how he wants to one day do a race, kind of neck to neck to Simon. But I just thought he was so inspiring and interesting. He, didn't let anything stop him. He says, my spinal cord injury doesn't define who I am. The message that I want to come out of this is that your injuries, your physical disabilities, your adversities will never define who you are. And I just think that is so inspiring and such a cool story. I could not imagine going straight for 33 hours, 50 minutes, and 23 seconds, cross a marathon in an exoskeleton suit. That is just crazy. But he's going above and beyond, and he helps the nonprofit organization. He's doing all these crazy things, and I just think it's such a cool thing for people to look up to, that, anything is possible. You just got to set your mind to it and go. So that is all the stories that I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening to GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Like I said in the beginning of this episode, I cannot believe, we're halfway through January. There's so many amazing things happening. It is like the best part of my day to be able to kind of read these stories and to share these inspirational, feel-good stories with you. It just it makes me feel good inside, and I hope when you listen to this episode, you have a smile on your face. But thank you so much for listening to today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and follow us on social media, and leave a 5-star review. It is always greatly appreciated, and I cannot wait to next time to share more amazing feel-good stories with you. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news. The GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.